every time we used one and it didn't work, like I thought it was my fault for a long time. Like I was like, this must be just like it's either something to do with the freezing process or just my bad, you know, stuff that I saved. I was like,
Yeah.
it's like the common thing was like she was, having, she was very fertile. We already knew that from having our first son. So it was like, what was the problem here? And like the only
hmm
thing I could think of that was me. And like leading into those and knowing like everything was going down, down, down. And at the time, like I hadn't had bottom surgery yet, so I don't know. I didn't think there was still hope.
Welcome back, everyone, to Transparental Advisory. My name is Taylor. I'm joined again with my co host and my best friend.
Hi, I'm Christa Morris. Welcome to TPA. This is a podcast about the transgender experience, the parenting experience, and what advice we've gotten and learned on the way.
So, I just want to first hop on and just say to anybody who watched the pilot episode in its full length, I just want to say thank you to everybody for doing that and just to everybody who's supported us along the way. But today's episode, we're trying to figure out how we were going to start discussing what the parenting aspect of our transitions looked like. Because when it comes to being trans and also being a parent, there's two things can be true at once. And that's, you can be on the same path, but you have totally different outcomes. And I think that's one of those big similarities between me and Krista is yeah, when we first started our transition, we had a very similar situation, which was we started out with one child. And would you say that was kind of the turning point for you?
Yeah, I think that was the little like maybe kick in the butt I needed. Kind of kind of start thinking about this transition thing and being trans thing a little more seriously. And it wasn't like super intentional. It just kind of like maybe subconsciously was like, okay, we completed this thing. Now let's start focusing on us a little bit more. Me.
I totally can relate to that. What's so hard about doing a podcast with your best friend is you know so much about each other. So it's kind of like how do we retell that story to each other, but for also the listener? So for me, one of those similar situations when it came to that point in my life, we ended up wanting to pursue something bigger and do this next step. But I wasn't quite too sure at first on how to do that because I wanted to grow my family. Would you say that was I lost where we were at there?
Was that something similar? Yeah. When I had been thinking about like how to come out and stuff, we were in the middle of pregnancy and I was like just kind of dabbling with things behind the scenes just to like, make myself feel a little bit better. It wasn't until like probably 3 or 4 months after my son was born that I came out to my wife and was like, this is a thing that I think I need to pursue. And one of the concerns she had expressed to me was that she wanted to grow the family. And I had also wanted to do that too. So we had to, for us, taking precautions and like steps, measures to make sure that we were able to do that further down the line while still granting me access to transition was a priority.
Totally different for me on how mine went. So how did you prioritize things when it came to that?
Well, I think the situation was like kind of getting a little bit dire where I felt a pressing need to transition. And I think my spouse, noticed that and kind of like wanted me to like find my own way through a lot of this stuff, but still wanted to be with me and see I kind of had to do a lot of convincing and a lot of reassuring to like make sure she understood things weren't going to change drastically and not it was everything was going to be super slow. But one of the big things was knowing that if I did start HRT, like, us conceiving a child wasn't going to be an option after that. Or probably wasn't gonna be an option. So,
Hmm.
in order to, like, make sure that we were able to do that later, we had, set aside some of my semen, banked it, and then made sure to kind of, like, allocate some funds for later on and stuff when we were a little bit ready, or a little bit more prepared for the, process of IVF if we needed to, or, other, like, in I don't know what the word would be, insemination type of, like,
Yeah.
processes. We tried, like, a few different things, but that was gonna be later on down the line, and
Okay.
that's kind of where, once we kind of, like, figured things out a little bit, like,
Hmm.
transition was gonna start, that was, like, kind of the process.
Okay. So we're pretty much, when it came to wanting to grow your family, you were looking into just there was a delay in how you were going to grow your family with your spouse.
Yeah, since we just had our son, we knew we didn't want another one right away, we wanted to wait, so that was, like, a lot of our thinking process.
Yeah, and like for me, as you know, I ended up actually doing the complete opposite when it came to growing our family, which was I hit the delay, but I did it opposite, where I was delaying my transition. I guess postponing it is also a better word to be using. So when it came to us, I had come out to my wife, and it was one of the, well, actually, I didn't come out to my wife first. It was actually to my daughter, my oldest, at the time, because that's all we had. But when it came to her, I just told her, hey, like, I got this thing going on. I don't know what it was. It's just this part with having a child. It was a turning point in my life because I knew I was struggling with something, but I didn't know just how much I was until rocking her one night and just had this realization of, hey, like, if I'm expecting myself to, be honest to her and I want her to be honest with me, like, I really need to be all in on this. And that's when I finally decided, like, hey, I'm going to finally confront this thing that I've been battling with for years. And afterwards, I went to go speak with my wife about that, and just had no idea what was going on. It felt almost like opening Pandora's box, if you would. So when that happened, we knew going into this, we wanted to grow our family. But the biggest question was, especially in that time, was, well, what does this mean for us? Well, what that meant for us in, real quick, short summary was a lot of long conversations and a lot of emotions and feelings, concerns, because everything that we had envisioned had done a flip now and we had no idea what to do. But the one thing that I agreed on was, and because it was important for me, especially, and that's where every story and journey is different, it just meant, hey, I'm going to pause this thing. But the scary part with that for me was, all right, it could take a while to have a child. And I didn't know how long I was about to put this thing on hold. But for me, it was so important for me to grow my family. So I did that. Yeah, so that would have been 2021 and then all 2022 once we found out. And then eventually we can go and have a baby. But that's something we get into a lot longer because I want to learn more, especially about you with the journey of, you know, going through, I would you say, a fertility type of treatment?
Well, since I no longer had the capacity to create my own sperm, like,
Yeah.
this was before any surgeries, but this, we had decided we were ready, and this probably would have been around the time, I don't know, I wanna say this was probably around 2003 maybe. It was like a full almost, like, year and a half before we actually had our daughter, and we started, you know we started going to a fertility doctor, and the first person we went to, we had kind of done a little research, and we found a person that we thought was, like, LGBTQ receptive, like, had maybe worked with, like, other lesbian couples, trans people, I don't know. We were kinda wondering what if they hopefully they were gonna be accepting. So we went there
Yeah.
and stuff, and spoke with the doctor, and the, like, information that that doctor was giving us was really kind of, like, devastating almost. It was like, "Yeah, you're better off just doing it yourself," which
Okay.
would be called like, I don't think it's like IUI. I think it's a different term when you're just doing more kind of passive like injection type thing, which
Hmm.
is basically like a turkey baster. You just shoot it and stuff. And we had kind of like expressed that, we had a limited supply. And he kind of just brushed it off as like, oh, well, doing anything more than you doing itself would just be a waste of your money kind of thing. So we took that information and we were like, okay. So we kind of started tracking. We tracked Maddie's, her cycle. And I think right as I was going into like one of my surgeries, like for maybe my FFS or something, she had tried the first like kind of like herself doing it.
Okay.
And we didn't have any luck with that. And I think she had tried like one more time before we had ended up going to Pride. It would have been 3, 4 years ago now at this point. We didn't have any luck. So during Pride, we actually ran into a like LGBTQ like fraternity. Why can't I not say that word? uh,
Fertility.
Deals with, you know, people in our situation. And
Yeah.
she was like, we kind of told her the story of like that first doctor that we saw, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you, that like thing and stuff, and that you kind of like wasted those two like precious things because I think we had like 5 total, like inject like kind of like shots basically, and we had used 2 of them like kind of willy nilly, so that like left us with 3." And,
Yeah.
like, hearing kind of, like, knowing that we had, like, really only 3 opportunities to, like, kind of do this was really hard to take, and that's kind
Yeah.
of, like, when we started going to her a little bit more, and she actually, like, started doing, like, more things to, like, make sure, like, Maddie's, like, progesterone was up at a level that was, really well. She was doing ultrasounds to see how many eggs she had and stuff and which
Hmm.
side was dropping eggs. And she was doing kind of like a little, it's like, I don't know if it's like some kind of like treatment to like make it so she dropped a few more eggs or something.
Okay.
And we had tried it 2 more times, just doing what's called an IUI, which is
IUI.
intrauterine insemination. So we
Okay.
tried that 2 more times. And both those times, even with the extra help, didn't take. So by the last one, we were kind of like, okay, do we want to do this last
Yeah.
and see if that works, or do we want to take it a little bit more expensive route and go with IVF treatment? We
Okay.
ultimately decided that we wanted to do, a more guaranteed thing and a more like, higher chance.
Yeah.
So we waited a good amount of time, and this was like half a year, I think, of us kind of like, talking and weighing our options and stuff because it's hard to go through those, like, kind of, like, psychological things every month.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so we finally, like, decided, "Okay, we're gonna start doing the hormone stuff for my spouse and getting, like, her egg production going really high," and
Hmm.
then we went in for, like, an egg extraction, and I think they harvested, like, almost 20 eggs, but out of those 20 eggs, really only, like, 3 of them were viable. Which is
Yeah.
crazy, like, after, like, the whole process, and we had like, out of the 3 that we had 2 girls and 1 boy, and we knew that we wanted a girl. So, like, I think it was, like, a few months later, it wasn't, like, instantly that we kinda went in for, like, the implantation. It was, like, probably, like, 3 to, like, 6 months later almost. It was a while and Maddie having to do like, injections almost every day to like keep her progesterone up and keep like her cycle as like constant as possible. And then right before they had to like kind of like basically like trigger what state is it? I forget all the terms now, but
The
kind of like the ovulation section of the cycle where like everything's kind of like ready to like implant.
hmm
And that's when we, like, tried the first one, and they took the best, like, looking, embryo, and implanted it and stuff, and I think that was probably one of, like, the hardest ones that we did because it's, like, for an extended amount of time, we thought we were pregnant 'cause, like, tests were coming out like, you're
Yeah.
positive and stuff, and, like, I forget the level that they were tracking. There was some kind of, like, level in Maddie's body to track, if she was gonna like, if it was gonna take or not, and at some point, it just kinda stalled out and then started dropping, and we knew that it hadn't taken,
Hmm.
and we were like, "Oh, okay, so this isn't as guaranteed as we thought it was gonna be."
Yeah. It's definitely got to be really stressful.
Yeah, like I said, that was the hardest one because getting your hopes up through a pregnancy and then finding out that you didn't conceive, it's not a miscarriage, but it's on par with one.
Now, especially like for you, if you're talking to another, especially like a trans woman or a trans femme person or anybody along those lines, like how like were you dealing with like a lot of anxiety through this entire time? Especially when we're not doctors or anything. We just can offer like from our experiences. But when it comes to HRT, like we know there is a risk of, not being able to, conceive. And there's usually recommendations for you to consider like going to like what, like a sperm bank essentially.
Yeah, you can get like a donor type of thing situation, or you can
Yeah.
adopt. There are different methods.
But as especially as you go on with HRT, like, and I've heard stories where you can come off of HRT and that would potentially help. But for some people, especially if you've gone like potentially like for any of the gender affirming routes, it could become not a possibility. So I don't know exactly where you're at in all these situations and the things that were going on, but were you ever getting really like concerned just knowing like, hey, there's this one number and it's going to eventually potentially hit zero at some point?
Definitely, like, especially during the IUIs, there was like every time we used one and it didn't work, like I thought it was my fault for a long time. Like I was like, this must be just like it's either something to do with the freezing process or just my bad, stuff that I saved. I was like,
Yeah.
it's like the common thing was like she was very fertile. We already knew that from, having our first son. So what was the problem here? And the only thing I could think of that was me and leading into those and knowing like everything was going down, down, down. And at the time, like I hadn't had bottom surgery yet. So I don't know. I didn't think there was still hope though. Like I think I'd already been on HRT for too long for that
Yeah.
to come back and play another role. Plus the thought of like getting off HRT to like try to make more sperm or, more whatever was kind of like a also huge thing that was like, painful to think about.
Yeah. It's a gamble. And you, you were weighing a lot of your options and you knew like where you were at pretty much.
Yeah.
So going back to, I forget the type of term you use, but when it got to the point of, you were getting these positives for like on a pregnancy test, and then when you learned like, hey, that there wasn't anything, what was that moment like for you and like your spouse? Like, was there a lot of coping with like each other and just like, reassuring each other, like, hey, the next time? I
There
didn't know what
was
you're maybe feeling.
there was a little bit of that, but it was also like a sense of loss. Like there was like the doctors and stuff were the best at the IVF clinics, but they're also hyping us up like, oh, this egg looks beautiful and oh my gosh, it's gonna like be so it's this is like the one of the best ones we've
Yeah.
ever seen and stuff. So like, there was this whole like hype factory and stuff. And when we found out like that we maybe had a shot and stuff, we had started getting our hopes up like, okay, it's gonna take and stuff, and we're gonna have a beautiful daughter and this was kind of like easy kind of thing. Not easy, but it's like all this work was worth it. And then to, yeah, find out like a week or a week and a half later that we sit was really hard to take. And it was like a mourning process. Like you kind of had to like go through like all the steps, all the things of mourning. And like I would imagine that anyone who had a miscarriage would kind of have to go through a
Hmm.
similar process. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was, and after that it kind of left us a little bit like, you know, I don't know, gun shy kind of thing, whatever like those terms are,
Hmm.
where we were like, all right, we've got a boy and a girl left. We really want a girl, but do we want to risk it and see if like we can have this girl, or do we want to kind of like say, let's just do the boy, and if that doesn't work, then we have the girl that we want? It was a really hard decision. We ultimately kind of did go with like just giving it a shot with the girl, and thankfully, like that one did take.
Yeah.
But
That's
it
so
was like
awesome.
we did spend like another month or 2 waiting.
During those like moments, like were there ways of how like I guess going back to just what we talked about before, but like were you supporting each other? Did you do anything like special in these moments, like leading up into those times?
Yeah, I mean, we were always there for each other and stuff like that, and I guess, like, after IVF, according to this clinic that we were at, they're like, it's a special, like, tradition, like, after they do an implantation, they say, like, if you go and get McDonald's french fries, then, it ups the odds, even though it doesn't. But so we did that the first time, and we did it the second time too. But, yeah, we were, like, fully supportive of each other and stuff, and I was always, like, the one, you know, trying to be the strong one, because I don't know, it felt like those are the kind of moments that, like, she needed and stuff like that, so
Well, I mean, especially from, and this is at least from like my experiences, but like as a spouse, that's what you do for the person that you care about. You're there for them in these moments that are, stressful and anxious. And because, well, yeah, while she's dealing with, a totally different type of stress, you have a completely different type of stress as well. So it totally makes sense though. But what type of things did you do anything special in these moments? Like, were there anything, I guess, was there anything that you were doing to like ease your like anxiety then, especially like once you found out like things were finally rolling, or did it just feel like a weight off your shoulder then?
I think, like, we were on eggshells kind of, like, up until, like, the 12-week mark, that first whole trimester. We were, like, afraid to really tell anyone, like, usually, you don't tell people until you're past that first trimester, because that's when, like, the odds are the best to, like, have a miscarriage. So, yeah, we were kind of, like, keeping it close to our chest. Like, I think we had told people that we were starting, or that we had done, like, an implantation type of thing, but we really hadn't, like, spoken about it except for, like, a couple, like, people that were really close to us. But, yeah, I don't know if we, like, kind of, like, went too far, like, we didn't go to dinners or anything like that. We just kind of, like, were there for each other, and, make sure we were encouraging each other, and, making sure that our emotional needs were still being met.
Did you have anybody in particular that you had reached out to, like in the early stages, as you mentioned, or for even for her? Like, who were your support type of people?
Well, I think at that time I knew you,
Oh, yeah.
so we had talked. Actually, did yeah, I think we knew you.
Yeah, you did.
Well, I know that, like, we really first started talking, like, right after my bottom surgery, so I'm trying to get the timeline of that done or figured out.
I'm like, girl, I know it. I'm listening to you. I'm like, I've been here the whole ride,
Yeah, so, yeah, I think when was I don't know. Surgeries are such a blur now.
right? But
But,
so just
yeah, so, I had you to talk to. Maddie, I think, mostly talked to her sister and her mom about a lot of it and stuff like that. They were kind of like in the loop.
Now, you come from a different perspective. And I guess this is where we're both able to compare because we've been on the same side with things. How would you say, like, every pregnancy, I feel like, is there's stress no matter what, and there's anxiety, there's it's a roller coaster of emotions. Majority of it's all happy for the most part. But would you say there was a big difference from the first child to the second child? Because you have a unique perspective to be able to see it from one end of things to the complete opposite side. Would you say it felt different, like emotionally or anything like that?
Kind of. I feel like the firstborn gets a lot of the first stuff. Like, the more attention when they're born kind of thing almost. Well, maybe not with him because he was born during COVID, but,
Hmm.
leading up to that, I went to a lot of the ultrasounds with Maddie for our firstborn. And then for this one, I did a lot of them in the beginning when I was still at the IVF clinic, but I think once she passed a certain point and started going to like the actual like doctor for, ultrasounds and stuff, I didn't go as much
Yeah.
just because I think our schedules conflicted at some point or a little bit more than they did the first time. But yeah, so there was a little bit less of that, but as far as, getting emotionally ready for it and stuff, it was a little bit different process. It was a little bit like, I wouldn't say like teary because I'm still like not a cryy person,
Yeah.
like some people I know. But
I felt that.
no, but I think this pregnancy was also different for Maddie too. So dealing with she had a relatively easy first pregnancy, and this one was a little bit more morning sickness and a little bit more kind of back pain and other little aches and stuff and all that kind of stuff. So this pregnancy was a lot more that kind of support where it's like I was just trying to help her out a little bit more, doing other little things around the house and stuff. Yeah. The first pregnancy we were kind of just relaxing the whole time. It felt like a walk in the park compared to this one.
Well, I mean, an old wives' tale, is that what it's called?
Maybe?
Like, isn't an old wives' tale when you're having a boy that there's really nothing, but when it's a girl, that's when you typically would be dealing with a lot more morning sickness, I believe is one of the old wives' tales. If I
Probably not.
don't cut this from the podcast, somebody, if you know anything about old wives' tales, let me know if I was even close.
Superstition, Wagtail, sure. Yeah, I've heard
Sure.
that too.
Sure.
If your baby's gonna be born with a full head of hair, you're gonna get this kind of thing, indigestion or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, is if you get hair, it's like more heartburn and yeah.
Yeah. She was born with a full head of hair too, and Zach was bald.
Back to like the IVF, IUI, that whole process, and just for everything, because for here, yes, we're parents, but then also we're able to offer like our advice on certain type of things. So if anybody that is coming out as potentially trans or is considering it, maybe there's somebody who's listening that's a spouse and their partner is trans. I don't know how it works for like trans like men, like what this that journey is potentially like. I don't understand that aspect of everything.
I know
But
that trans men still have their, egg productions, it just kind of, freezes or kind of,
okay.
pauses. So they're still, all they have to do is go off, T, and then they can get pregnant.
That would definitely be something to invite somebody on that's gone through that situation. I would love to be able to understand that even more. But I guess to keep it with, where we're at in our experiences, what type of advice would you potentially give to somebody who's going to go this route or could be looking into it?
Well, I would definitely suggest, talking with your partner, if you haven't started transition yet, make sure that, children are both something you both want, and save your, bank whatever sperm you can, because that's going to be all you have. So, and then once you actually get to the point where you're ready to start having and trying to have children, definitely talk to someone who can help you through the process. Like find a, you know, I don't know if it's a Planned Parenthood type of thing or if it's a, those kind of like clinics, like especially one that's in an LGBTQ friendly place.
Hmm.
Yeah, they can help you with like maternity or fert- fertility type of like
Yeah.
treatment to like make sure that all your and track the hormone levels of your spouse or your partner and stuff, and they can make sure everything's gonna go as optimally as possible, because and give you the best chance, because it is hard to, like, finally get into the position and the mindset that you're ready to have children and see, like, you know, shot after shot, like, kind of, like, not working. So, like,
Yeah.
giving yourself the best chances and the best, options and stuff like that is kind of like, you know, the best way to go about it, I think.
Which I think that's why when we had talked about doing this podcast, we wanted to talk a little bit on my side of things because there was a part of a delay or postponing like growing my family on my side. But that was because like what you just talked about, it's talking to, especially if you're still with your spouse or your any type of relationship really. It's communication is crucial, especially when it comes to family planning. And we're no certified professional. We're just this is what we've done type of thing. But I think it just goes to show like even on my end, that was a huge part was just communicating and understanding what the needs are and figuring out not necessarily, just going one complete way or the other. It was figuring out how to meet each other with where we were at to best like meet our own needs, and especially that as a couple that wanted to grow a family. And but it just goes to show you can do it this way or you could do it that way.
Yeah,
You can still get
'cause
there.
yeah, in the end, we both have 2 beautiful children.
Which yeah, I was here we are, and 2 children later for both of us, and we're just figuring it out. But I want to revisit especially with that because we just finished up Pride Month. And one of the things you had mentioned earlier, I hear a baby. Okay, so just figure out where we're at. But one of the things that you had mentioned earlier was you had been going to another doctor who wasn't so great. But then you had mentioned that you had attended a Pride festival where you had found a vendor there. You saw one of the services that they offered were for family planning.
Mhm.
So, would you say that a reason to attend Pride events is because they could find resources like this at a Pride?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest opportunities at a Pride, like, festival or event is to find things that support and can help the community, like family planning, like, other services. There's, like, a lot.
I mean, I would definitely say that's super true, especially when you're looking for anything, whether you're going to wanting, if you're religious and you wanted to find a church. I can't tell you how many different churches I just seen at the last local Pride event to our area. And I was like, this is incredible. There's so many different things that are offered. And then when you're just looking for places that are, welcoming and affirming to everybody, it's a great place to go. But especially for when you're looking to, fine comb who is going to be best to help with like planning my family moving forward, it sounds like you found a great resource. Do you remember what Pride festival or event you were at?
Well, it was at our local Pride festival, San Diego Pride, and
Okay.
I forget the name of, like, the clinic that they worked for, but her name was, Deidre, and she was very supportive, very, appreciative, and I think that first Pride after our daughter was born, we had, like, gone and met her again and was like, "This is our daughter, it worked."
That's awesome. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's such a positive and like happy way to like wrap this up. But what we're going to have to do though, with especially speaking about wrapping it up, is we'll have to put like an image or something once we figure that out, especially if we're putting this on like YouTube or Instagram or wherever people would be able to find us, like put the logo and or the name of the who you used, especially if you're local to the San Diego region of California.
We
So
can put it in the show.
perfect. Anything else that you want to talk about or get into about this?
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little more about your side? I don't know.
I'm thinking with where we're at time wise, I'm thinking we'll basically continue this part of the conversation into the next episode where we'll get into probably more me and, just that it's okay to delay things or wait. I think it'll be a good way to potentially tease the next episode. But yeah, we'll definitely get more into what, family planning was like for me. You had mentioned surgeries. I'm sure we'll get into the surgery side of things. I'm sure we'll be getting into so much more as these all go. And that's the great thing about doing a show where it's just me and you chit chatting until we eventually say, hey, like, let's bring some other people, like a trans man or anyone who's had a family that way, or just anybody who's got other cool experiences that they want to share with us.
Like when we think the audience is getting sick of us, then we can bring in more people.
The ultimate goal is to have people sit there and go, hey, Christa and Taylor, they seem like really cool people. I don't mind hanging out with them for, 30, 45 minutes. That's the goal, is make it where people want to hang out with us.
You know what like a good destination will be for the podcast? We could start doing like a traveling live show.
I low-key love that, especially the fact that we're on opposite sides. And when we do go to hang out in person, like I've told you before, and I think I talked about this wheel. We're going to create a wheel eventually that's just going to say, hey, we're going to this. That's what we're doing. We're going to have a wheel. We're going to spin it. And whatever state we go to, we're going to go to that particular state and we're going to interview somebody in that particular state. Or if it's like Alaska, we'll invite them on and we'll do like a podcast virtual.
If we're still rolling strong a year from now, we can do a setup like that one podcast people did at the next San Diego Pride, or we'll just set up a station and do clips of people.
That would be great. Who knows? Maybe while we're at San Diego Pride, maybe we'll bring like camera and a little mic and just do some impromptu like interview questions. Just, get somebody with one quick question and say, hey, here's this. Because as we've talked, previously, and this is kind of just a little bit more babbling, but we do have some segments that we do want to introduce. We'll probably wait till we debut it, but it does involve questions. So maybe that'll be a great little way to debut that particular segment. So stay tuned for a future episode because I think I'm going to try and figure out how to make that work.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. So how do we close this out? You're better with these things than I am because you watch more podcasts than me.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Again, this is TPA. You can find us at our social media accounts, mostly Instagram, but Taylor's like everywhere. Where are you at, Taylor?
Just Instagram right now. Yeah, people can find me on Instagram at, __ Taylor.jade. And then I forget what it is for Facebook, but yeah, I post on Facebook too. But otherwise, where do people find you?
Find me mostly on Instagram, and that's Christa _Morris _83.
But more importantly, follow us on Instagram, especially right now with where we're at for TPA, which would be at, Transparental Advisory on Instagram. You'll be able to, and as long as everything goes smooth and from here, you'll be able to find us pretty much wherever you get your podcast, and then may or may not be on YouTube right away.
But if you do get on YouTube and see us, make sure you subscribe.
Yep. But I was going to say, please subscribe to us everywhere. Give us 5-star review, do all that fun stuff, and just leave comments and, leave any suggestions, questions, or anything in our DMs or messages anywhere, and we'll do our best to answer them. Or if you're old school, you can email us at transparentaladvisory@gmail.com. And new episodes air when? Did you get that?
We're going to shoot for every other Monday, but that could be subject to change.
And we will figure out how we keep doing these. And once we get better at, I would say, starting and ending our podcast. But thank you everyone for watching and or listening.